The East African tradition of the Maasai tribe is to greet one another with the words Kasirian Ngera, which is Swahili for, so how are the children? In that community, the well-being of their children is the highest priority. If you are interested in participating in thought-provoking conversations about the well-being of children and families, please tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. to Fresh Start Today on 860 AM WNOV. Together, we can save our children.
Good afternoon. You're tuned into Fresh Start Today with your host, Sean Roby and Jermaine Reed. We have the wonderful attorney Sunshine, Tarina Washington Franklin in the studio today. Good afternoon, attorney. I got Sunshine. How you doing?
On a cloudy day.
Good
afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Mr. Reed and Mr. Roby.
Oh, excellent. And we have a special guest in the studio, Miss Karen Jones. Good afternoon, Miss Jones. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm absolutely wonderful.
Hey, it's a lovely day out there.
Yes, it is.
And you all brought all this sunshine, all this glamour up in here. You're a glam mom, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, watch out. So listen, we're going to have a good time. You know how we do it, beans, greens, and cornbread. Just have, table talk. And so we're talking about something related to child welfare, which I'm sure that you all can relate to on some levels. So we're going to request that if you'd like to join this conversation, you can call 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. And we're going to have a great conversation around understanding power differential in helping professionals and helping professions. Understanding the power differential in helping professions. So we'll get a little bit deeper into what that is going to consist of. But I want to make a couple of community announcements before we get started. And one is the SDC Poverty Summit with keynote Dr. Joy DeGruy, who is the author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, will be their keynote speaker at the Italian Community Center on August the 2nd. You can call Diane Robinson at 414-906-2700 to get more information. Also, Fresh Start will be conducting our Reasonable and Prudent Parenting Training on Saturday, August 13th at 10 o'clock a.m. and Thursday, September 8th at 5:30 p.m. It's important that all of our foster parents and even folks who are going through a licensing process with us, even though you can't get credit for that, it's still information so you know what's coming down the pipe. The Wisconsin Reasonable Prudent Training. Also, the Milwaukee Child Welfare Partnership Council, as I've told you in the past, is probably one of the most important meetings that is hosted by the Division of Milwaukee Child Protective Services. I mean, you have all the movers and shakers. I guess they're the movers and shakers. I'm not sure what they're shaking, but I'm not sure. But anyway, they're going to be in the room. You're talking about the secretary of the department. You're talking about her deputy. You're talking about the division administrator, Dr. Robin Joseph. Just a number of folks who make a lot of recommendations and whatever it is that they do. You want to be a part of that environment. So you can call 414-343-5500. That's going to be on July 29th from 12 p.m. until 2 o'clock p.m. 12 p.m. until 2 o'clock p.m. It's a very positive environment, and there's just need-to-know information. But guess what? The community needs to come into the room and be a part of that conversation. The other thing is, you've heard me talk about it in the past, the League of Justice Parent Advocacy Services is a group of individuals that are coming together to provide legal and social work assistance to families who are involved in the child welfare or CPS community. I mean, we have attorneys, we have psychologists, behavioral health specialists, we have legislators, we have former CPS workers and current case managers and former case managers, along with, property owners. So we want to really wrap our arms and embrace individuals whose cases are relatively new. So anywhere between 1 to 90 days, your case is open. We want to connect with you. But right now we're in the organizational phase, and so we're looking for other people who want to partner and who have a concern about the type of or the lack of support that many families who come in contact with child welfare currently don't have. So call 414-333-3372, 414-333-3372. After 4:30 p.m. today, leave your name and your number, and I will be sure to have somebody get in contact with you if you want to be a part of the League of Justice Family Advocacy Services. So we're talking about understanding power differential in helping professionals. Now, in child welfare, we do a lot of talk. When I talk about child welfare, first of all, let me say I'm not just focusing on what's happening here in the state of Wisconsin, because child welfare is so much bigger than what's going on in the state of Wisconsin. But in general, in the child welfare community, both nationally and locally, we talk a lot about the importance of keeping families together. It's one of the central values or core values of the work that we do, should be focusing on keeping families together. In fact, there's federal law that is intended to guide child welfare policies and practices that stress the value of promoting the best interests of children by maintaining healthy connections to their families, their communities, and their culture. But unfortunately, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, for whatever reasons, this just does not happen. So we're going to talk about, the impact of power differential on family engagement and how, in turn, that impacts family reunification. And again, my guest today in the studio is attorney Tarina Washington Franklin and Miss Karen Jones. So, Karen, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay. So I'm hoping that throughout this conversation with you and Attorney Franklin, that you are going to help us understand a couple of things. What family finding, what measures we're taking to have your grandchild reunited with your family. What was that process like? And this is kind of really like the third series that we've done on grandparents who've had some challenges around connecting with their grandchildren, keeping those kids in the family, because again, our goal and our mission is what? Keeping families together.
Absolutely.
So we got to talk about that. We'll also talk about how what the core values are of helping professionals, social work, and the child welfare community. What is absolute and qualified immunity, as well as what is absolute and qualified power. We will also go into depth about what is informed consent, because a lot of these families involved in child welfare, they're attached to attorneys, lawyers, or I don't know what the correct
attorneys.
Yeah, attorneys. And there's a process called informed consent. But also on the child welfare side, there's something called child informed consent, and we want to talk about that. Last thing, we also want to talk about what the Interstate Compact on the Placement of Children Agreement is, otherwise known as the ICPC. We're going to talk about those good things today. So, Karen, tell me, what was your introduction to who you are, and what was your introduction to the child welfare system?
Well, okay, again, my name is Karen Jones, and I'm a grandmother, I'm a mother, and I'm a native here. I'm a native here in Milwaukee.
You're Milwaukee native. Okay.
Yes. And I was introduced to the system by my grandchildren being placed there into the system. And
I want to say, I don't want to mention any names of your grandchild or
Right.
the case managers or the case management agency. We just talk in general terms.
Exactly.
So you're introduced because your children were removed from your child's care.
Yes.
Your adult child's care, and placed into the system.
Yes.
What did that look like?
It looked like a catastrophe.
Okay.
It was initially when they do that, they contact someone, a relative that that child is named, and see if they are willing to take those children, and that's what happened with me. I was contacted, and I said yes, I wanted to take the children, and that individual told me that, well, you need to have a 3-bedroom apartment before you do so.
Okay.
So I just moved, and my place was smaller. It had only been about 5 months, so it wasn't possible for me to do that. I encouraged her that I would take the couch, I would, take and give him the bed, and the girls could share rooms, and we could do it that way as a family. She told me that wouldn't happen, and then the children were just placed in the system.
Okay. So there's probably some other details that there was some family issues that were going on, in which we all have some challenges in all of our families. Even
Right.
folks who work in the system, we don't have perfect families.
Absolutely.
We got
That's
right.
family. There's mental health that comes at play. There is alcoholism and drug abuse. We don't have perfect families,
Exactly.
and so like some of us, your family also had some challenges as well, which
Yes.
kind of led to your children, your grandchildren, coming into the detention's
Yes.
possession. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay. So now when we look at this, you already jumped to the family finding process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because typically when there's a call to 220-SAFE, which is the Child Protective Service line here in Milwaukee County, and someone makes an allegation of abuse or neglect of a child, the state has to come out in most cases and investigate. There has to be some level of follow-up, whether, as Mr. Roby said in the past, they screen it out, which means it didn't rise to a certain level to warrant a full investigation, or they can screen it in, and then they put a response time depending on how serious the allegation or the charge or the circumstances are. So that can be 24 hours, it can be within the next 5 days. It varies, depending on the case details. When Child Welfare, or CPS, has made a decision to remove a child, one of the first things they should be doing is inquiring from that parent whether or not they have any relatives or close family members who are fit or eligible to take the child or children into their care until some things are sorted out. So you're saying that when this initial event occurred, they did follow that protocol.
Right. So what I'll do is I can clarify that for you. What initially happened was that an allegation had been made, I believe, and so it actually came to my home.
Okay.
And I contacted my daughter to see what was going on because, as I was aware, everything was going fine. She was working in her own apartment with the children, and she said, I don't know. It's probably just a follow-up to something else. And she does suffer from some mental issues and, some other substance abuse issues at times. But it's, it's kind of she's in and she's out, and she'll go through bouts of that. But she was in a good place, and she had slipped to a bad place without my knowing. Such.
It happens.
So when I contacted her, what happened was, we talked about it, and I said I would do this under circumstances that I would remain guardian so that you can get yourself together.
Okay.
And I believe it's just important that family talk and do that, but we have to set some boundaries so that the children don't suffer, that there's stability for them. There's no coming back and forth, that they're stable. And I did that, and she didn't want to do it that way, so to speak. She didn't want to do guardianship. So she actually called them. But when she did, she called them to say, pick the children up. So she did provide that list of names to them, and I was one of the people on the list, along with other family members. My brother, a sister-in-law of hers, and another individual that was a family member. There were people provided on the list, several, for them to call. So actually, when the children were picked up, I was notified prior to them coming just by concerned individuals saying, hey, this is going to happen. So I went and I found out, hey, where are my grandchildren? I made the initial contact, and I called, and I said, this is what I want to happen.
So are you saying that your daughter gave names to whoever the CPS representatives were, and they didn't call or contact the CPS representatives? Now, you've mentioned 3 or 4 people whose name were considered to be extended family, but still, you know how we look at family, uncle, aunt, there's like second mama, second daddy, if you will, or second grandmama, second whatever. We're very close-knit, but those individuals were not contacted.
No, not immediately, no.
Not immediately. Okay, so the children are placed into care. The calls and contacts were, and you verified with these individuals who your daughter had gave the names of that they were never contacted. Okay, were all of those individuals living locally?
No.
Okay, because there's a thing that sometimes, in regards to where your children's relatives may live, there's this thing we call interstate compact agreement. It's the ICPC that Mr. Roby is going to talk a little bit about.
Just give me a moment, because I just had mine.
Now, sometimes interstate compact on the placement of children establishes a procedure for ensuring the safety and stability of placements of children across state lines. That's basically what it is. So your relatives do not have to live in the state of Wisconsin for Child Protective Services to contact them. And I always tell parents, especially if family members know that things are going on, talk with those individuals and say, hey, this is a high-risk situation here. And make out a list, 5, 10 people's name on it, so that when child welfare come, you have a copy, you give them a copy, have them sign off on the copy that you walk away with, so that we can make sure, that's that oversight, making sure that Uncle Willie and Uncle Bob and Auntie Mary and Grandmama Jones were contacted about these children. And then as soon as you find out that your grandchildren have been in the system or contact with the system, start putting together your list and working with that biological parent to let the system know that we have family. This child has family, and that is basically what the family finding theory or concept is that every child has a family. And it's important for their sense of belonging to keep them connected to their community, their culture, as well as their family. So that's what the ICPC is. So if somebody's out there and you're listening to the program and your relative child has just came into care, and nobody has contacted you, hey, pick up the phone, call 343-5500 and let them know, I'm Uncle Bob. I'm Uncle Joy, I'm Auntie Mary, and I'm interested in providing care to my niece or to my nephew or my grandchild. We all on the same page?
Yes.
All right. So you had this exchange, and they removed the child. They didn't initially contact. You reached out to them, and then what happened?
And so it was then I started working with the ongoing case manager. And I let her know that I did want the grandchildren, contrary to what she was told. And so she went ahead and went about the procedures that they go about. She came out to my home to do a safety assessment. Even though it was a 2-bedroom, she did tell me at that time it doesn't matter that it's a 2-bedroom because you're the biological grandmother, that we can work with those situations.
There's some exceptions that they can make when it's...
See,
family is precedent. Yeah.
Exactly, because I'm family.
Because you're family.
There's precedence.
Yeah.
So she came out. She came out, and we passed that, and then we had the court date. And one of the things that happened is that my daughter was in a state where she was again not stable. So when that happens, then the only person that she can lash out at is me. So,
which we have a tendency to do. We lash out to those folks who are closest to us.
Right. And so, understanding that she had given them a lot of false information. Now, I'm human, but I've been in business before, and I know that there's a level of due diligence that one should do to make sure the information you're getting is actually accurate.
Right.
But that did not happen. So in the process, because she told them about I am disabled.
Okay.
But I am able to care for my children, grandchildren, and my child.
And typically when folks who are relatives, they may present with some physical limitations themselves. But it's something that we do even in the licensing process with foster parents. As long as we can, if you want to apply to become a foster parent or you want to be a relative to care for your children, everybody has to go through a physical. And a doctor needs, or physician who's treating you need to sign off that basically you are fit enough to care for a child. Did that happen in this case?
Yes, sir. I provided that for them. I made the initial call to make sure that happened.
Okay.
And they
so a doctor said
that.
you're fit and qualified.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He said it right, and they got that information right before the court hearing date. And when we went into court, she said that everything checked out, the background check, everything checked out. My home, the physical says I could care for them. And then at that time, the judge was told that they would be placing my grandchildren with me. And so I was
What year was this? Was this?
2014.
Okay, so 2 years ago. Okay.
In 2014. So when we left, we came outside in the hallway, and I was asking, okay, what do I do? What do we need to do to make this happen? And they said all I needed was a toddler bed. I said, I'll go out and purchase that right now.
So you needed a bed, yeah.
I needed a bed. And they said, no, we don't don't do that. We do that for you. We provide that for you. So I said, okay. So I waited for the bed. And I waited.
How long did you wait?
Never received the bed.
Okay. So you're still waiting, basically.
I'm still waiting.
So 2 years, still waiting. Okay.
I purchased the bed.
But the bed they were going to give you still waiting
never
for. Okay.
Came to me. It was trying. I kept calling about that. It seems that they were, for whatever reason, given my daughter's address, and the bed was being delivered to them. When the case manager finally checked into it, it was being delivered to her home, and I actually found that out through her landlord. And I thought, well, wow, how did they get that? So it still progressed. And so I said, during that time, my daughter got involved in some other things that became really dangerous. Safety concerns for us as a family. That I thought, I don't know if we're going to be safe here, because I don't know what she's gotten herself involved in. And I thought it prudent to make sure that I let the Bureau know.
Okay. At the time, they were the Bureau of Walking Child Welfare,
yes.
But now they're the Division of Walking Child Protective Services. So you let them know there was some safety concerns.
Yes.
What happened after you notified them?
After I notified them, she told me to make the phone call to the police, do the things that I needed to do. So I had a family meeting with my parents and my siblings and family members, and we decided that, hey, let's go on. Because I had also provided a list of a ton of family members.
Got you.
That they could go to. So I said my brother and his wife agreed to take my grandchildren, and I would move to that state where they were.
Okay.
And then go and take care of my grandchildren from there. And that was August. In August
of 2014.
Of 2014, the latter part of August when that finally happened. But so the ICP was started. She called my brother. She called Indiana in August. They never heard back from the caseworker again until the middle of December.
And what month did this all start in?
It started in May.
In May. So
actually, I'm sorry, the latter part of April.
Wow. Okay. And so now they reached out in December to another family member who was living out of state.
Right.
Now, it's interesting because I'm reading a document that's published by Children's Hospital Wisconsin as it relates to what family finding is. And let me reiterate, family finding is a program aimed at reestablishing family connections between children in foster care and their relatives. Based on a national motto, family finding provides strategies to find and engage relatives of children living in foster care. Note that Chapter 48.0215, relative means a parent, step-parent, brother, sister, step-brother, step-sister, half-brother, half-sister, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, first cousin, second cousin, nephew, niece, uncle, aunt, step-uncle, step-aunt, or any person of a preceding generation as denoted by the prefix of grand, great, or great-great, whether by blood, marriage, or legal adoption, or the spouse of any person named in this subsection, even if the marriage is terminated by death or divorce. Now, what is considered to be success? According to Children's Hospital, as it relates to family finding, success is achieved when 6 or more people that fit the definition of a relative make a lifelong commitment to a child. The last thing is, according to Children's Hospital, when does a case close? A family finding case closes when the following steps have been completed. 40 or more relatives have been located.
Lord have mercy. Are you kidding?
40, or did they contact 4?
No. All of the relatives here that actually live here were never even contacted or talked to. And if I might elaborate, before that happened, before we made the decision to send them with my brother and his wife, I asked her, I said, once I get the children, the bed is in place, is it possible that we might be able to relocate?
Okay.
So, because of the safety concerns.
Okay.
And she told me no, that wasn't possible, which I later found out was not an accurate statement.
Right. So let's talk about two things here, and then we're going to get Attorney Tarina Franklin to weigh in. Karen Jones, we all got issues with families, and the ideal thing is for us to sort through whatever our issues are before getting child welfare involved. But once they become involved, is it sometimes difficult to have healthy or maintain healthy relationships with relatives when you have this third party involved?
Well,
or not?
You would think not, but it is. It is hard because one of the things I was continuously trying to do was get my daughter to a good place and maintain the relationship, restore the relationship, which is one of the things that they wanted to happen. But it seemed as though the case worker was trying to do everything she could to keep us divided.
Give me an example.
Well, an example of she made an accusation to my daughter and told my daughter that I was intimately interested in having a relationship with her husband. My son-in-law.
Wait a minute. Because now I want to go, Lord. Oh, Lord. These folks at child welfare in America. Now, there are some values. Let's talk about the 9 core values in helping professional. One is autonomy. This refers to the principle of the client's right to choose their own course of action, commonly referred to as self-determination. There's now malfeasance, which is people are familiar with and dictate generally associated with the medical profession that says, above all things, do no more harm. Above all things, do no more harm. In helping professionals, the goal is that we don't need to cause more trauma and division and pain to folks who are already vulnerable. Okay, so that's a core value. Then we have justice. Define justice quite simply means providing equal treatment to all people. Fidelity, simply put, one honors the value of fidelity by making honest promises and honoring commitments made to clients. Veracity, everything that a child welfare worker does to build a sound working relationship with a client can be undermined by being untruthful with that client. So it doesn't seem like this person, whoever you're referring to, really was evaluating and demonstrating that they understood what the core values of their profession is.
No.
What?
And one of the things that hurt her, that really hurt her, but one of the things that hurt her first and foremost was that the worker told her that I said I did not want my grandchildren. Now, even though she had...
What would be the motivation? Because what would be the motivation of a helping professional to come in and lie, basically?
That was my question, is why is this happening? And because it wasn't working with anyone at the time, I thought I better start seeking out help, and found out some things about a little bit how the system works. The grandchildren. So, and I thought, okay, that's why this is happening, is because I believe that once she saw my daughter, she talked to my daughter, she knew about the issues and challenges that she was having in her adult life, the things that she had done, that she basically prejudged me based upon that information and decided that I wasn't worthy enough to get my grandchildren, so let's do what we can do so that they...
And certainly not all case managers do this, but what if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that possibly that this person judge you based off some of the choices and experiences of your adult child.
Yes.
Do you think, and Attorney, you can weigh in, you've seen a lot of cases, do you think that sometimes the system judge people, like if mom, dad is on drugs, or mom, dad is abusive, or mom, dad is neglectful, or what have you, that everybody in the family is corrupt, or this is a bad family? You know, and we have this ideal family over here that's going to provide a better life for these children. Do you think that kind of happened, that folks judge folks as a group?
Oh, most definitely. In child welfare, what I've experienced is guilty by association.
Right.
Innocence is not necessarily proven until the end. Unfortunately, you have a higher burden to demonstrate to the child welfare system that you are worthy enough to have these children placed and put in a familial situation, that you are being entrusted with your choices. And just to kind of follow up on Ms. Jones, I don't know if you really wanted me to get into
Go ahead, talk.
Show, but
we just have bean greens cornbread. Go ahead.
She touched on a lot of different things that clearly tie into why I'm here about the distinction of absolute and qualified immunity. Specifically, when you started stating that when the children were initially removed, that your daughter had set up in her own mind a kind of safety mechanism, naming some people who she would suggest that the investigative worker could have considered. Mm-hmm. And the mere fact that that worker chose not to, from either a personal issue and or a professional issue, that clearly is why I am here to distinguish between those two topics. When that initial investigation was not performed correctly and further time delay was instilled and further potential emotional and or physical harm was now being received by your grandchildren, one would think, oh, well, we have now some emotional harm to these children because of this time delay. We have some possible physical harm being instilled as well, too, because of the misleading information, because of the false information that the initial worker received erroneously. We'll just say erroneously. And now these kids are suffered. But what the audience needs to understand is, unfortunately, even though it's clear, it's very understood that that initial time delay may contribute to some type of emotional harm, separation from the parents, separation from other family members and things like that.
It causes trauma.
It causes trauma.
Right.
That worker's role is basically excused from a civil stance. Wow. She is she or he. I'm saying she because typically caseworkers are females, but we have male caseworkers too.
But does it matter if they're working for a private institution or or a public entity? Because I believe there is a distinction. Because my case managers who work for me, if they go out and lie, mishandle, or misuse their power, or misinterpret something, or they're just intentionally, not honest or dishonest, that puts my agency at risk, and I can be sued. My company can be sued. I'm not protected.
You're not protected. The agency is not protected. But
I ain't protected. They get my house and my car too.
Well, hopefully you have a great attorney to keep you away from that. But nevertheless, there's a huge distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. In their public capacity, let's not to name any.
I mean, a state worker. If they're a state worker, okay.
If they have basically done their investigation that's consistent with their role as being a caseworker, and unfortunately, the ultimate finding is maybe these children should not have been removed because it was based on false information. Yes, under qualified immunity, unless there was some statutory or constitutional right that was violated, there will be no civil liability towards that caseworker. And that's the distinction we need to make. And I think, and it ties right into what you were saying about this power struggle control
This power
issue.
differential.
If they know this coming out of, getting their social worker degree or things like that, I think they do feel a little bit, I am basically here to do whatever I need to do to your life. Unless we all know, Attorney Sunshine, keep it real. So I'm telling y'all today, that's essentially what I've experienced, that they just do whatever and poo-poo on you if I made a mistake.
And I think to add to that, because there are a ton of case managers, social workers in all fields of child welfare and other jurisdictions that do an exceptional job.
Yes, that's true.
Unfortunately, we hear about these negative stories because they outweigh the good. In
I want somebody to call me with a positive story. That's
where I was going to go, because it's unfortunate that we have to hear about these circumstances and biological families, grandparents and whatnot have to go through all this tragedy. And the kids
And I'm sure there's
the
some
most.
families have been helped, but one thing about mistakes is we have to understand that when we take on these roles in this responsibility,
that's right.
We just can't make mistakes like this that's so negligent and just sloppy in our work, because we're talking about folks' family and their ties to their family being sometimes permanently severed, and going to a training class is not going to make a difference. It's not going to heal the fact that now this 2-year-old child has been adopted away when they could have been right there with their birth family or what have you. Is inexcusable. That's what we need to understand. So we have to raise the bar in child welfare to say that some things just cannot happen, because these are lives that we're dealing with, human lives.
Right.
Attorney Sunshine.
Go ahead.
Franklin.
Okay, Sunshine.
There we go. Sure.
You are a ray of sun. So, just a question for you: if that worker even if that worker keeps information from their own superiors.
And see, what you're talking about is on the private side. So this is not the CPS worker who works for the state. This is when you talk about the ongoing case management side. Now, that's a private corporation or company that contracts with the state to handle ongoing case management once the child has gone from the initial phase into formal foster care. So now they're assigned to an agency, they're assigned to a case, and there's no longer the public social worker or case manager that's working with the family. It's a private.
Correct.
Because child welfare in Milwaukee on the case management side is privatized. So that person, I think, I don't know, but attorney, you're here. I don't know that they are protected by the same immunity that the public social worker is.
From what I've relied upon thus far, there's a minimal distinction. And I keep saying a minimal distinction because regardless if it's public and or private, if in fact that
act in good faith,
if they act in good faith in their investigative role, and it's not infringing on a person's statutory or constitutional rights, or basically free, and I would say,
so if a case manager lies or withhold information intentionally from their superior,
that's not necessarily infringing on a statutory or constitutional right. However, playing it a little bit further, one could argumentatively say that, well, a right to parent your child has been infringed upon, and because that's your constitutional right, that your child should be with you, not taken away from you. And it stems from basically these false accusations and or false investigations.
I got a question to throw out there to the listening audience, and I appreciate folks like JT, Martha Love, Meech, and Jennifer, just a number of people who tune into this show every week, and some of them reach out and say how well they enjoyed the program. But pick up the phone and call 414-444-5250. My question to the community is this. Do you think that case managers, whether they are on the private side or the public side, case managers, social workers, should be protected by immunity when they are intentionally deceitful or dishonest? So give me a call at 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. Now let me talk about the power differential. It is inherently the greater power and influence that helping professionals have as compared to the people they help. Power inequality or power differential, power imbalance exists whenever you take on a role that gives you authority over another or creates the perception that you have authority. There are a number of different power differential roles. Supervisor, supervisee, employee, employer, clergy, parishioners, lawyer, client, judges, coaches, parent, child, teacher, student. There, in every relationship that we engage in, there is a power dynamic, and typically in a relationship, somebody has more power than the other person, and so when we talk about child welfare, child protective services, the reality is that child welfare is a powerful institution. And so these workers have a lot of power that is vested in them. Police officer and just everyday citizen. That is a relationship, and power is real. Now, walking into this situation, when you're dealing with the system, how powerful did you feel?
I felt helpless initially. I just felt like because this was all new to us.
Right.
Okay.
It was something we've never experienced before, so it was all new to me and to members of my family until I really truly began to pray about things.
Okay.
And found that, I'm not going to just take this. So I started reaching out and looking for resources. Who could help me?
Yeah.
Who could help me with this situation?
Who can help you? So you're resourceful. You're reaching out, and that's what families have. Don't stop searching. Don't stop researching. Because the thing about information is power. Knowledge is power. And if you want to neutralize or stabilize that relationship, that's one thing you can do is research.
call around. Yeah.
And let me just follow up with what Ms. Jones just said, just from a legal stance. And again, I've experienced this in dealing with child welfare. Power is definitely an issue in the juvenile court system, whereas Ms. Jones is stating initially the children were being considered to be placed in her care. You have to remember, until you go to court, you are not really even a party to the case. These proposed guardians that we love and entrust our kids to be a part of, legally, they are not actually a participant in the court proceedings. So the virtue of that child protective worker's power to basically allow, and I'm going to say allow,
or child welfare worker.
You don't have that real authority to even be part of the court proceedings unless you are, in most cases, invited to be a part of it. So that's another whole level of power here, too, that sometimes these child protective caseworkers know this, and they use that to their benefit.
All right, we have a call.
To keep the child away from you, and as a grandma or a grandma, you are like, I'm going to do whatever.
You done pulled out the pig feet on me. Yes. Listen, we have a caller on Fresh Start. Caller, what's your take on that? Do you think that case managers, whether public or private, should be protected with some sense of immunity when they're dishonest?
Hello, is this me?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. No, nobody should be protected from doing things that's against the law. I mean, it seems like the city, the country is going towards that, leaning towards that for some reason. I just don't understand it.
I don't understand either, my brother.
If you make a mistake, own up to it. And why you make a mistake when a child or life is involved? This is beyond me.
Right.
Because it seems like they be trying to take away a child from his home, no matter what age the child might be. They give a lot of power to people that don't even know you personally, don't even have no history on you personally, and it don't make sense.
All right, thanks a lot, my brother.
And one other thing, brother. It was some question about the earth a couple of days ago. Why is she called she? It's because she is the producer. She gives life. She doesn't. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why. That's the reason why land is always she. All right, thank you, my brother. Love you, man.
All right, take care, my brother. Caller, what do you think? Okay, so I'm sorry, my caller hung up, but if you want to call back at 414-444-5250, do you all think that case managers, social workers, whether they work for a private agency or a public agency, if they are intentionally dishonest in terms of how they handle or manage a case, that they should be protected from being from sued or, discipline? So give us a call at 414-444-5250. Now, let me say something, because Lord Acton, back in the 19th century, early 20th century, said, and I quote, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." So I want to kind of refer to the work of Dakar Keltner. According to him, people who assume positions of power, they're likely to act more selfishly, impulsively, and aggressively, and they have a harder time seeing the world from others' point of view. This presents us with what they call the power paradox. The skills most important to obtaining power and leading effectively are the very skills that deteriorate once we have the power. Simply saying that some people can't handle power. Their personality is not a match to be in certain roles. There's some law enforcement officers who should be working behind a desk. They shouldn't be in a car. They shouldn't be on
no blue suit,
gun. Don't need a badge. Don't need a flashlight. Don't need nothing.
And you know what? And that's powerful, because that speaks to the term you hear a lot, that this person is drunk off power.
Drunk
off
power.
And that's where you take it in, and then you misuse it, and then it unfortunately leads to families being in these compromised situations.
Gotcha. Okay, caller, you are on Fresh Start today. What do you think? Do you think that that folks who work for a public or private agency in the capacity of a case manager or social worker, if they're intentionally dishonest or repeatedly negligent, that they should be protected from being sued or, liable?
Good afternoon. First-time caller, long-time listener. I certainly agree with the fact that they should not be protected. It's almost like me having car insurance and purposely creating accidents to benefit from the accident.
Wow.
The case is, what we got going on is we got these young preferably young ladies that's graduating with these degrees and getting placed as foster care people that are making big decisions, again, based on individual lives, and they're not parents, and they don't have the understanding about being a parent. So therefore, all they have is the book knowledge and less experience on changing and transforming these lives. So I don't think that they should be protected when they willingly and willfully are being dishonest, and they shouldn't be protected at all. I don't agree with that.
Because we know that these case managers and social workers have a tremendous amount of power, and they can influence or sway the judges. They can sway the guardian litem, by what they report out orally or in writing. So that's a tremendous amount of power that they have in this relationship.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Because you mentioned earlier that they can go to court, and it's not always they have the parents or the families are invited to court and not always told about this. And again, what the power that they possess, based on their knowledge and or relationship about you, they can make decisions without even you knowing about it.
Now, let's talk about that, because you brought up something. Thank you for tuning. Do we have another caller?
No.
Because we're going to talk about informed consent, because in terms of making decisions and, whatever, without the client being aware, what is informed consent from a legal standpoint, Attorney Tarina Franklin?
Okay, but let me quickly put this out here for people to food for thought. Think about what this last caller just said. These caseworkers are typically, we're going to say, non-minority, young
Majority
women.
of the case managers are white case managers, white females who work in child welfare. That's a given, just like in education. It is what it is.
But think about it. Out of all of our regulatory bodies, we are all held accountable for all of our actions. As an attorney, if I mess up on a case and a client thinks I've screwed up, they can report me to Office of Lawyer Regulation. If a doctor messes up on a case, they can be reported to the medical board. If a judge messes up on a case, you can be reported as a judge to the judicial community to review what your take was on a case. Why is that same extension not given to these caseworkers?
Well, there is the BRL, the Bureau of Regulation License, but the thing is the state working for the state.
That's the state working for the state. So why is there not an independent body, administrative body out investigating the
I need
same
some hog maw juice.
Because typically, even with that, the only thing that pretty much will happen is there'll be an unsubstantiated finding, and you'll just be removed from that case.
That's terrible.
So you got to think about that.
So what is informed consent?
Informed consent basically is when you're put in a position and you're expected, you being the caseworker, the attorney, to give the information that's necessary for your client to rely on upon making groundful decisions as far as the next court date, as far as receiving treatment, not receiving treatment, administering treatment, and things of that nature.
All right. I have to say this. I have to take a break because we are a foster care agency. Listen, if you want to be connected to a culturally responsive, down home greens and cornbread, I'm talking about we just real. We the real on the real. Listen, Fresh Start Family Services would love to partner with you to take care of our children who, for whatever reason, seem to be just flying outside the county and placing other places that they really shouldn't, especially when they got family that's local and when we also have resources local. But just to prevent the exodus of so many of our children, if you would like to become a licensed, and you were going through our program, or you reached out to me months ago and I gave you an application, and they told you not to go through me or something, go through them. I don't know what the problem was.
I needed to go through them.
That you need to go through them. Isn't that something? But anyway, call 414-351-1100 and talk to me, Licensing Department Extension 117. We'll be glad to give you information about our program and have you get connected. So, informed consent from a child welfare standpoint is that clients have the right to choose whether or not to participate in any child welfare intervention, from emergency response investigations through permanency planning decision-making for their children. Workers have an obligation to help them make, or clients make, an intelligent decision about these questions, as intelligent as possible about these questions. That is what informed consent is. Child welfare service workers have the responsibility to disclose all significant information about the intervention, including what will happen and the likely implications, consequences, and ramifications of the various choices confronting the client. Caller number 5, you can win 2 tickets to the Colored Child Welfare Conference. I'm going to ask you all again. What is the number of African American children who are in our local foster care system? Now, the 3 conditions that must be met before a child's decision, before a client's decision can be considered fully informed are the following. 1 is the client must have the capacity to make the decision. Capacity meaning the client has the ability to make rational, sensible decisions. The second thing is the client must comprehend the information presented. The worker must give the information to the client in the way the client understands it. It must be done in a language the client understands, using words the client understands. The nature of the intervention and the risk and consequences must be fully explained. The worker should ask the client to repeat their understanding of the information so that the worker can be assured things were fully understood and fill in whenever gaps exist. Now, the interesting thing about that is just think about when a child is being removed from a family. You know, they're being removed from the family. You just had your child removed. Where are you at? Where are you processing mentally and psychologically? What is your state? And we know that when we're under an enormous amount of anxiety and pressure and stress, it impacts our ability to rationalize, to make sense of things.
And I think the other part to that, when you talk about that, if the police are around, you got all these people I've never met before walking in my house. The police are with them. They're telling me A, B, C, D. I'm really in a state of shock. And when we talk about trauma and how it impacts everybody differently, then ultimately, why would I want to go and sit down and talk to the same people who took my children away from me? So we have all these different factors to keep in mind because I'm frustrated.
Relationships are built on trust. I'm glad you brought that point up because, see, the difficult role, I think, for case managers and social workers, CPS workers, is that on the one, to some degree, you are representing the ally of the family. You're the helping professional.
Right.
But at the same time, you're also the investigator.
Right.
The interrogator. So that's got to be a difficult position, and some people, don't know how to balance that. So it's kind of hard for us to trust folks who have historically been non-trustworthy.
And that's a powerful statement because you can have somebody who is there for you and willing to go the entire 100 yards. However, they still have obligations to their job.
Correct.
And still trying to work with you, but then they still have to report out because that's their job.
Now, there's a third condition that must be met in order for a client's decision to be considered fully informed, and that is the choice is voluntary. Voluntariness implies that the client is free to make this choice and is acting without any coercion. Coercion simply is the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force, intimidation, or threats in order to get compliance. Now, how might this look in the case of a child welfare service worker and a pregnant mom? It could be, if you don't cooperate, you know what? What? Say it, because this right here is the real hog mark right here. What is it?
Your baby will not be going home with you from that hospital.
And that's coercion, and it's unethical. Well, you're smiling, you're looking, and can you breathe? You need some oxygen? What?
Because that happened.
Oh, say no more. Okay. Now, if you all remember back in 2009, there was a case right here in Milwaukee. I'm going to give you 2 cases of people who misused their power, their authority, for their own personal gains. And it was involving a case manager named Peter Nelson and Theola Neely. And according to the Associated Press, a woman was suing the state of Wisconsin, and a social worker, she says she worried because she worried she would lose her children if she didn't have sexual intercourse with the man. Theola Neely told a federal judge that Peter Nelson was sent to her home to investigate child maltreatment allegations 2007. So she says Neely began visiting her unannounced after telling her that her case was closed. Well, you know what? He impregnated her. Neely gave birth to Nelson's child in 2008. He retains full custody of the girl and resigned from his position from, at the time, the Bureau of Milwaukee Child Welfare. So that was clearly, or what she was saying, that was a misuse of his power. Correct. You know, remember the Pennsylvania judge, Mark Severelli Jr., down in 2011. He was sentenced to 28 years in massive juvenile justice bribery scandal. This judge was involved in a case that was known as Kids for Cash.
I remember, yeah.
And he was convicted of taking $1 million in bribe from developers of juvenile detention centers. So what he agreed to do was to make sure that these prisons, the detention centers, were filled, and most of them were African-American teenagers, and he got $1 million. See, that's abuse of power. So just because folks have on a robe or just because they have a title, they're a social worker, does not necessarily mean that they are honest. That's the first thing. We can't walk into these relationships just assuming that people are going to work in your best interest. People have ulterior motives and agendas. So this has been a really great discussion, and wow. I don't know. I didn't get a caller for the state fair. So we'll try back next week, and it's really been great having Attorney Sunshine in with me, along with Karen Jones. I got one more question because we got a few more minutes, and what I'm trying to figure out, in your case, the family motto, we talked about that people should be reaching out to a number of family members. What is your advice to families who are going through what you're going through? Because it was a long battle, but just recently, you got your grandchildren. You called about the Colored Child Welfare Conference. You came, you made some connections, and let's give kudos out to Dr. McManus, Patricia McManus. She got on your team, and you had a meeting with some higher-ups at an agency, and some things changed. But in that meeting that you had, because this is going on 2 years now, they asked you a question, according to you, about what about the family that your grandchildren were living with? What are you going to do to keep those children connected to them? If they place the children with you, the grandmother.
Yes, they did, which I found to be very cold because of all of the efforts to try and keep them from me.
Were they in county?
I'm sorry?
Were they living in county?
No, they had moved them to Madison. So, at one point I couldn't even see them for almost 8 months.
For 8 months?
They wouldn't allow me to see them.
We need to be more trauma-informed.
Yeah. So
we talk about it, but we need to actually demonstrate it.
What families really have to do, everybody has to start communicating and working together.
That's right, family.
And when that parent who either gave the child to the system or the child was taken, we must be on their side, not make that's a lesson I had to learn, is to make them not feel like they are bad people for doing that, but to embrace them and help them.
All right, it's 4:00. Thank you all for tuning into Fresh Start today. Be well, be safe. Until next week, we'll be back.